Let me get this little toggle bar down. I know y'all can't see it. I can see it, and it's the world's worst thing when I'm trying to teach y'all. So bear with me just a second. It is December the 2nd. We have a brand new power agent at Just Power Agent here in Mississippi, Justin Britt. Let's give a big shout out to Justin. Congratulations to him. If you are a power agent, you know that that is the top 1% of the company, and that is rewarded for excellent production and commitment to your clients, our clients. So, congratulations to our newest power agent. We have sometimes two power agents on here as well. But congratulations, Justin Britt, on becoming our newest power agent. All right. We want to welcome Brooke Foreman. She's a brand new agent of the Gulf Coast of Mississippi in our coastal office. Welcome, Brooke. And we have some birthdays. So Danica's birthday is tomorrow, December the 3rd. Melanie Gibbs, December the 4th. Holly O'Brien, December the 9th. Haley Bells is December the 11th. And Monica Wells is December the 17th. Happy birthday, guys. Yeah, there's our beautiful agents, Danica, Haley, Melanie, Monica, and Holly. Happy birthday. All right, our November top producers. We had 51 units closed, 13.2 million sold. And we had five of those agents who had 1 million plus months. So Justin Britt, he was over 2 million in sales for November. He is number one. Lisa Dillon is number two. Lee Garland, number three. Melissa Johnson, number four. Randy Inman is five. Melissa Maniti is six. Janice Ferguson, seven. Eight is Wendy Colser. Nine is Mary Hankins. And 10, Hillary Copeland. Give you guys a big hand. Congratulations. And congratulations to all of our agents who had closings in November as well. All right, scammers are still out there. We talk about it every state meeting. We're probably not going to stop talking about it because it is still prevalent. I get text messages from agents in our state about every other day. I've uploaded one of the most recent ones, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit. They change it up from time to time, what we're seeing right now. I know Melissa recently had this one to come across, so it almost looks believable, but you could see the text there. And then the keyword is Zoom. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to send a virus to your computer. And when they want to send you a Zoom link to set up a call, it's not really, they're not interested in any properties. They're trying to give you a virus so your computer shuts down and they steal all of your information. So I want you guys to be really careful. If you get a text message or an email that says they're wanting to buy a certain property and man, it's too good to be true. They're ready to go. And then they're going to try to send you a Zoom link. It's not legit. So just be mindful, stay mindful out there because it is still very prevalent. And most of all of you have the Forewarn app. I want you to use it, background check those numbers. You can also go through property records as well. One of the things that we do see from scammers from time to time is they will submit fraudulent warranty deeds, even license and all that stuff. They will replicate it to look like it is, but it's not. So if you ever suspect a scammer, I want you to call me, send me a text. As always, a lot of you have, and I really appreciate you guys for getting with me whenever you suspect that you are working with a potential scammer, because I'm going to help you work through and find that information as well. It's protecting you, it's protecting our company, and I don't want anything bad happening to you guys. So, all right, moving on. Keep verifying those contractor licensure. If you are working with a contractor or a handy person, make sure you're watching the contract terms in those repair agreements. If they're wanting somebody who is licensed, do not go hire Joe Blow off the street that doesn't hold a license. You got to make sure that that person is licensed. You can always check that with the Mississippi State Board of Contractors and then ask them for a copy of their license as well. and then make sure that you're getting receipts for the work. There's also a place inside of SkySlope that you can upload that. For now, I believe you upload it to your inspection contingency notification addendum checklist, but there's going to be a placeholder at the bottom where you can upload receipts that are pertaining to that transaction. All right, our Christmas party. So it's going to be at 6 p.m. at the Mahogany Restaurant Bar here in Hattiesburg. It is December the 18th. We have a real live Santa. You're going to have a chance to get updated headshots as well. In person, we have giveaways, there's a raffle and more. There's going to be food. Everybody gets a drink ticket for those of you who drink. So I want you guys to come out and have a good time with us that evening, and we'll celebrate the year. I need you guys to RSVP to me by December the 10th. You can just send me a text message, let me know that you are going to attend, because I'm paying per head count with the Mahogany. So we do need a head count for attendance. And we have the entire branch room rented out, which is really pretty. If you've never been there, it's really special back there. Lots of good picture opportunities as well. So hope to see you all there. All right. You guys know where to find me if you need me. Epic support. For those of you who have transaction questions or anything like that, you can always go into um, epictransactions.com. It's live daily from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. So epictransactions.com. If you haven't been paid on a transaction within 24 to 48 hours, that's the rule of thumb. So if you guys have not been paid within 24 to 48 hours, we want you to go in to the epictransactions.com. It's a live Zoom, and everybody from the transactions department is in there, so they can pull up to see exactly what is going on and how you can get paid quickly and efficiently. So that's daily, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Y'all have any questions before we get started on contract training? All right. So working with a real estate broker, we're going to go over listing documents today. Just, a quick cover of good practices and all that good stuff. So you're working with a real estate broker, things that you need to know, general information. When you are presenting this form to a client, you're going to use it before discussing confidential information. It is not a contract. It tells you that at the top of the form. It just defines who represents who in the transaction. So client versus customer, it's in plain terms. You want to ensure that the correct box is checked before the discussion begins. Make sure you're explaining agency, whether they're going to be a client or a customer. And we also want to remind you guys, late delivery of this, when I say late delivery, meaning after you've met with them or you didn't get it signed, that's not an excuse. That's grounds for issues with the real estate commission. You guys have got to have this form in the beginning. So we had an issue recently where agent just had her real estate broker form signed, but she lost it. She didn't have a copy of it. She met the people at the property, got it signed, and then we didn't have it for the file. So, in that situation, we had to, go back and make sure that everything was true and correct. But I want you guys to be mindful, if you are meeting clients at the property, make sure that you are scanning the document. So for those of you who don't know, everybody should know this, but there is a notes tab inside of your smartphone. You can go to notes and you can scan it. Some of you have a tiny scanner app built into your phone, but it's very easy to use. If you don't know how to use it, I could send you a quick tutorial. You scan that document immediately if you're not getting it signed by e-signature, and you're going to hand a copy to that client. So if you're not, you always need to hand a copy, the paper copy, to them. And if you are keeping the paper copy, you need to at least scan that copy and email it to them. So one way or the other, make sure that they've got a copy of the working with the real estate broker form or any forms that they're signing when you meet them. All right, so let's go down and let's talk about where you should check the box. Most of all of you should know this. We have a few new licensees on the call as well, so I'm going to talk to you about it. When you're meeting with a seller, if you are representing them, if they are your client, You're going to check this box here. And if they're allowing dual agency within the transaction, that last box will be checked. If they are not allowing dual agency, let's talk about that for a second. So let's say that there's another agent from our company, they're wanting to show the property, and the seller is not going to allow dual agency. And this is important that the agent needs to know this ahead of time. So if you are the listing agent, make sure you disclose. That person would need to be a customer if they are on the buying side. So they could be a customer, but not a client if the seller has not allowed dual agency. So they would sign there, the buyer would. But in this particular situation, you're meeting with the client, which is going to be the seller. The customer thing doesn't come into play today. This is just when you're getting listing documents signed. So here you would check that you're the seller's agent. You are going to sign as the licensee here. You're going to date it. Epic Realty should always be prominently displayed as the licensee brokerage, and then your client or clients are going to sign here. Again, if they're going to allow dual agency covers a broad spectrum of things. That could be any agent within our company from any market in Mississippi that's going to show this property. This box would be checked here, or if you are bringing the buyer yourself. All right. Y'all have any questions so far? And they're going to sign on the client side. All right, moving down. We are an equal housing opportunity. We always want to get this form initialed in that meeting. We know that protects all the classes: race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin. Reinforces that an agent must never steer or allow discrimination. It means coming from your client as well. No biased language in ads. Everyone gets equal service and opportunity. So this is to be initialed by your client. If you have a referral agreement, so where this comes into play is the referral. This form would be used in state where we're not sending money across state lines. Maybe this was a referral from, I don't know, it could be anybody. It could be another brokerage in Mississippi, could be another Epic agent in Mississippi. This form would need to be filled out where we are not sending money out of Mississippi to another broker. And we'll talk about the co-op form last. All right, scrolling down. This is your MREC cooperative agreement. So we talk about this form a lot. This form is supposed to be sent to me after the other broker has signed it, meaning the out-of-state broker. The MREC cooperating form agreement is the form that is to be used whenever we are sending money as a brokerage out of the state of Mississippi to another broker who has sent a referral to us. So it goes on to tell you all about the cooperating agreement here. And then it tells you instructions for completing it as well. One thing I want to be real clear on today, I know we're talking about listings, but I want to make sure that you guys understand that whenever you have a cooperating form, so you are making sure you've got all this filled out properly. Make sure you're watching the Mississippi Licensed Principal Broker's information goes here. So would be my name here, my license number, and then the address, and then the mail-in address. Your information doesn't go here. It's the brokerage's information. And then the non-Mississippi principal broker's information goes here. So the out-of-state broker, that information goes here. Believe it or not, this form is the one we get back that is the most messed up out of all the forms. So we do a lot of correction on these forms because agents, a lot of times they get busy and they just, fly through them. So we want you to understand how it should be properly filled out. The non-Mississippi broker's information goes here. And then the referring party's information. This is the actual client that you're going to be working with. So here, if they are an owner or a seller, this box should be checked here. And then if the property is stated, that should be here. So your commencement date, and you have a starting date and an expiration date. Sometimes we see these transpired, but make sure you're watching that too. So like today, and then however long that referral is going to go for. make sure you're being mindful of the following year. So you would want to put 2026 and not 2025. We've had a few of those as well. All right, one thing I want you guys to listen up on this. So if you have this joint listing box checked, or you have a purchase or a sale contract procured by a non-Mississippi principal broker, it's very rare that either one of these boxes are going to be checked. But one thing I want you to know, if you mess up and you check one of these boxes and I file it with the Mississippi Real Estate Commission, they're going to ask for a copy of the agreement. And 9 times out of 10, this was just checked by mistake. You guys are not going to have a copy of the agreement because the out-of-state broker didn't procure the sale or purchase contract for that particular property. And then the joint listing, we don't see these hardly ever. If you have a situation where you have, a non-Mississippi principal broker in a situation like this where we're advertising, that broker and then us, get with me. I'll help you work through that. Most of the time when you guys are working with OpCity, Realtor.com, or Zillow referrals, you are only going to have a client or customer referral or a listing, one of these two. So just make sure that you're being mindful when you check these boxes. The compensation. So the Mississippi licensed principal broker shall receive. This is what you're getting as the agent, the percentage of compensation that you're receiving. When you're filling these out, make sure you're watching this here. This is the non-Mississippi principal broker. It's in big bold letters. One thing you don't want to do is put 25% or 20% or 30% for yourself, and then you're sending all that money back to the out-of-state broker. We know it's a mistake. 9 times out of 10, you're not sending all that money back to the out-of-state broker. Make sure you're watching your numbers there and your placeholders. All right. Any questions so far? All right. This is really important. So the non-Mississippi principal broker is going to sign here always. They don't sign on this side. This is for me. This is where I sign. And I won't sign this section until the out-of-state broker has signed it. So if you send this form to me, I'm going to email you back and tell you, hey, I got to have the out-of-state broker's signature. And the reason being is I have to go into my portal and file it. I'm the only one that can file it with the Mississippi Real Estate Commission. I have to go into the broker portal inside of my MREP profile and file this form for you. So I need it within a timely manner too. The law says within 10 days of the last person signing. So I need this form as soon as possible after the out-of-state broker has signed. I need you to get this to me ASAP so I can sign it, send you a copy. I'll also send you an email receipt whenever I filed it with the Mississippi Real Estate Commission, so you have that for your record. It's the only thing you're going to receive from me. And the reason being is because the Mississippi Real Estate Commission does not send us a paper copy or anything like that anymore. When I go into the portal and file it, I put your name at the very end of the block so I know who the referral is for, but that's it. That's how the process is done now. All right, moving on, we're talking about listing agreements. So this is actually, this is our listing agreement, F4B. All right. When you are going into a listing and you're doing all things an agent would do when they're taking a listing, after you've explained everything, seller's going to sign your listing agreement. So this is pretty straightforward. One of the things you have to watch out for up here, and we just got through talking about a referral. If it's from a referral from an out-of-state broker or another company, or maybe it's a relocation company, this box should be checked up here. All right. Your brokerage name is here. This is here. This is where your commencement date is. That's your start date there. And then you have an expiration date. So your start date, you have an expiration date. If you have a marketing commencement date, maybe you're going into the listing, and you guys got to be really careful about this with your MLS associations as well. Some of them have a requirement to where you've got to enter that listing within 24 to 48 hours, depending on which association you're a part of. Some of these do allow a marketing commencement date now, but make sure you know your bylaws of your associations that you're a member of. So here, if you taken the listing and your seller says, hey, I'm not ready for a week or two. I don't want it to go live until, I don't know, December 20th, just hypothetically speaking. Or maybe it's December the 5th. Could be any of those. You're going to put the marketing commencement date. That's when the MLS is actually, or the listing is actually going into the MLS. So um, the listing brokerage is required to submit the listing to the MLS for cooperation and other MLS participants within 1 business day of marketing the property to the public. So keep in mind of that. And then your tax parcel number for our newer agents that don't know how to find this, you could always go to the prior listing, but I would check and double check. So here, when you're logged into your listing or you're logged into MLS, we'll pick one. How about that? I gotta log back in. Lock me out. All right. Here, you see there's a parcel number here. This is accurate. It's already been verified by the agent. So in a closed listing, you could go in and you could type in the address and you could find the parcel number here. But another way you can also verify this is something called Delta Computer Systems. It's available in most of our counties. We have TCS maps as well. We use Land ID, which is really good. If you don't have that app, I encourage you all to use it. There's a lot of good data that goes beyond what the county gives you. But what you would do is you would click for the county you're looking for, and then we're just going to type in. It's really case sensitive as well. It didn't pull up Brody Lane, as you can see. We'll just go to this one. So let's just say that we're wanting to verify the tax parcel number here. You would scroll down to here, go to view tax, and then you're going to see this parcel number here. You can copy and paste it. Sometimes you're going to see multiple parcel numbers. There could be a few. And if you don't have enough room inside of your listing documents, so they give you 3 blocks here, you can always drop down to here and you can add those parcel numbers there. All right, scrolling back up. You also want to make sure your legal description is here as well. So your legal description, when we go back and look at that, there's 2 ways you could verify. Well, there's multiple ways you can verify it. This is just usually the easiest. This is how I do it. Your legal description, this is a legal description inside of the actual MLS description here. So then it tells you legal description. But you can also go back to Delta and you will scroll down, and this is your entire legal here for this property. So don't look at any of this here. This is actually your homestead tax, PPIN, and section number over here. This is your full legal description here. So you would input all of that information inside of your listing documents. All right, scrolling down. We talked about the marketing commencement date and how you should watch your MLS associations if they require you to enter that listing within a certain time frame. Your listing price that you've established with your seller, and then the commission. So what is the percentage going back to you and Epic Realty? That is established here. Maybe you have a flat fee. Maybe you don't have a percentage. You put your flat fee here. This also needs to be checked. So if the property is sold, transferred, conveyed, leased, rented, or made unmarketable by the sellers without the written consent of the listing brokerage. So this is if your seller decides to cancel the listing within the listing term. You want to make sure that there's a nominal fee here to protect you as the agent for your time and effort as well. So make sure you have whatever that is for you that you've, discussed with your seller, make sure you put that number there. Sometimes you'll have a variable rate. That could look like many things. One prime example is if you, as the listing agent, have agreed, maybe the seller says, will you work with me on your compensation amount, your listing commission amount, if you bring the buyer? That's completely up to you. All commissions compensation is negotiable. There's nothing that is set by law. If you, as the agent, are wanting to offer a discount on your commission. Maybe it's, I don't know, you're going to charge them 4%, you're going to charge them 5%, you won't charge a full percentage of whatever that is. You would want to spell out those terms for your variable rate commission there. Or if it's anything other, maybe it's something unique to the property, that verbiage could go here. Still note that you would have your percentage here, and you do want to make sure that if that, again, if that property is canceled, sold, transferred, conveyed, leased, or rented, made unmarketable by the sellers, that you have something to protect you there as well. A lot of times I see listing documents come over and this is not in there. So the seller up and decides they want to cancel, you need to be protected. All right, moving on. Buyer's brokerage compensation. This is if your seller is offering compensation to the agent who is bringing a buyer. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Just, it depends. If they're not going to offer compensation, if they said, no, I don't want to offer anything, you need to educate them, have that conversation, that would go there. They choose not to offer compensation to the buyer brokerage. If they come back and they change their mind later on, you're going to amend your listing agreement. We'll talk about that in a second and which form to use for that. However, if they are offering compensation, that amount, whatever that amount is, could be anything. You would put it there. Or if it's something unique, again, if there's certain verbiage spelled out that, they would consider maybe offering compensation with an acceptable offer. I've seen certain verbiage put in here as well. So in other, what you would do is you would check, you can, if they're going to offer, but it has to be acceptable, maybe they don't want to put a percentage. Check line 35. And then here, you would write out what the terms are that they're willing to accept. Could be whatever's in that purchase contract that's coming over. Everything's negotiable. So if you find yourself in a unique situation and the seller says, I just, want to base it upon whatever offer's coming in, I may do it, I may not. But if they're leaning more towards doing it, you check box 35 and then drop down to other on box 40 and then type out your verbiage there. All right, y'all have any questions so far? I feel like I've done a lot of talking. Any questions? All right, we're moving on. These two boxes, they must be checked. Excuse me. So, buyer brokerage compensation shall be paid to a listing brokerage when the listing brokerage is acting as a disclosed dual agent. It is subject to any variable rate agreement and or a buyer agreement. So this box must be checked, and then box 45 must be checked as well. The buyer's brokerage compensation shall be paid to the listing brokerage as additional listing brokerage compensation when the buyer is not represented by a broker, they're a customer, and the listing brokerage is not working with the buyer and is acting solely on the seller's behalf. All right, you have a protection period in here as well. So 50 through 56 in this section, it covers that protection period. Some do 90, some do 60, some do 120. I'm usually 90 to 120. It just depends. So, all right. We're scrolling down. This one tells you about compensation. We all know what that says. If you don't, go back and read it later. All right, multiple listing service. This is where the listing is going to be entered into. So some of you are part of 2 MLSs, some of you are part of 3. Some of you are only in 1, but wherever that listing is going to be distributed to, this is where that information goes. Line 74. If it's not being listed, now here's another thing, you got to watch your MLSs on that too. Some of them charge fees to not list the listing in the MLS. So if it's like not listed inside the MLS and they don't want it publicly marketed, there are MLS rules that come into play, and each of our MLSs are different. But like HAR, for instance, if you don't enter the listing into the MLS and it's office only, it's not being marketed, you got to pay a $250 fee to the board to not enter this listing into the MLS, even though you got the listing agreement on it. So be mindful of that if you guys find yourself in a situation, we've had a few, that where your seller just does not want the listing publicly marketed and we're not going to put it inside of the MLS. All right, all these are authorization check boxes. These are conversations that you have with your seller. Make sure that it's good to advertise the property on the internet, place a lockbox on the property. They authorize the listing brokerage to post a copy of the property condition disclosure statement inside the MLS, and then the listing brokerage to place a for sale sign on the property, and then to act as a disclosed dual agent as well. All right, moving down. And here, this box is location where your lockbox is going to go. So I always like to make sure all my lines are filled out when I'm at that listing appointment. Some of you are going to send these e-signature. Maybe your seller doesn't want to go through the whole thing, but make sure that you are explaining what the contract says. Don't just tell them sign here. Don't do that. That's never good. Make sure you are explaining all things within inside your listing agreement. Improvements. This is important, guys. We had one where the seller assumed that the listing agent knew that they were going to take the refrigerator. And that's a costly mistake. So what you want to do is have that conversation with your sellers. Find out if the kitchen refrigerator is going to stay or if it's not. If it's going to remain, if it's not going to remain, make sure it's checked. Also, make sure they spell that out inside the property condition disclosure statement. So there's a supplemental page as well. I like for everything to be documented, and I'll show you guys where you can put that inside of the PCDS here in a second. It's going to ask you if there's a security system contract that must be fulfilled. Homeowners or condominium assessments, and a lot of you down there on the Gulf Coast and some of you in Jackson as well, this comes into play, especially where you have those condo assessments. If there is, you're going to check this box here, and then you want to make sure this is fully filled out. Make sure you obtain the documentation and anything that is pertinent to that association and attach that to that property condition disclosure statement as well. All right, moving down. Homestead exemption, you'll want to verify if the property has homestead exemption or not. Most of your land records, county records tell you that. So like for instance, I think this one here, nope, we'll have to go back inside the tax record. So view appraisal. Where is it? Click on residence here. This is not telling me. Hold on. I'll bear with me here a second. Here we are. Okay. You're going inside the tax link for here. So the property details, tax information, you've got all that here. It breaks it down by county, city, and school. There's no city tax here because it's in the county. And then your total amount for your tax rate is here. Every county is different. If you don't know, the seller doesn't know, they should know when they're paying the taxes on the property. But if they don't, what you want to do is call the tax assessor's office for that county and verify that. Even better, get it in writing. Get them to send you something over from the tax office. But here, so you see this homestead exemption code here. There's no homestead on this property, and it tells us that. It says none. So exemption code is none. There's no homestead exemption. There are different types of tax incentives in Mississippi. 65 and over, they're exempt on the first 70,000 value, I believe. I might have that wrong, maybe 75, 70. And then you've got some of our veterans, they're fully VA eligible. Some of those will not have taxes on their property. So if they have a full disability exemption, we see a lot of those where they're not paying taxes. If they have a certain amount, they need to verify all that with the county or the city. And then homestead, once your homestead is filed, all this varies by counties of where these properties are located. Like Lamar County, they give more of an exemption for homestead than Forest County does. Forest County is very minimal. So make sure that you are putting that information in the listing description properly whenever you're putting it inside the MLS. The reason is because whenever the lenders go to, they have all this information and they're going off of what is in the MLS description, they can verify it as well. Lenders can verify it. But I had one yesterday where the buyer gave the wrong tax information. The buyer told the lender that the property taxes was like $150 a year. That makes a difference on their principal and interest payments, their escrow account for their mortgage per month. That property tax was actually $3,000 a year. So it's a stark difference, 150 a year versus 3,000. So make sure you got all that information correct whenever you're putting those listings in.
That must have been a new home
Oh, it's
construction.
actually a
The pro
29-year-old
the
home.
property address is what I mean. The property by itself would be that low of a tax, but if it's got a new home on it, you need to
Yeah.
determine what that's going to be. So I can explain these taxes to you a little bit if you like. So,
Yeah, if you want to take a stab at it.
considering I worked with the tax assessors 20 something years ago for about two years, but um, when it comes to homestead exemption, and you're right, Lamar and Harrison does give a little bit more than Harrison County. I mean, Forest County does. Um, but in the general scheme of things, in the state of Mississippi, that one that you had for 120,000, the tax assessor takes 15% of that, and that's your evaluation that is multiplied times the millage rate. Now, you'll probably never know what the millage rates for school, county, and city and all that are, but you can kind of come up with an idea from last year because it doesn't change that much. But if you have homestead exemption, they take 10% of that value and apply the millage rate. Now, some of these counties give an extra $300 for VA, for some of them just give you a $300 credit on top of that. So, for the most part, in general, you can say, hey, if they didn't have homestead exemption and this was a tax amount of $3,000 with homestead exemption, it would generally be 2,000 or less.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you can come up with generalities like that, but I would still get verification from the tax assessor's office on any of that. So,
Yeah. Thank you, Grant. Thank you for
no
that.
problem.
All right, moving on. I know we've talked about a lot, but I want you guys to have a full understanding of what these forms mean when you're working through them. We could speed through them, we could go through them pretty quickly, and I do plan on wrapping it up here in probably about 15, 20 minutes. But I want you to make sure that you understand what you are talking about when you go into a listing appointment, and that you're educated on this. So moving forward, we've talked about tax rates, we've talked about homestead exemption, and now a lot of this is repetitive. We're going to move past all this. We'll be here all day if we read through every bit of that. All right. Make sure you've got all your seller's information in here. Most of you are going to have that when you're at the listing appointment or before because you've had those conversations, but just make sure that your forms are properly filled out. We do look at those things when we're doing compliance checks. And again, if you have anything that's not, there's not enough space inside your listing document, you would drop down to other provisions or anything that's important that needs to be noted in here. Also, this was added, I believe, last year, FERPTA. Verify that, it's not a foreign person of purposes for FERPTA. They would know that if you've asked that question. Most of our listings it's checked not, but sometimes you may find one that is. All right, it tells them about cancellation here. And then you want to make sure that you have everything dated, and then you get your listing agreement signed. Here, so Epic Realty is the only thing that goes here. For our newer agents, you don't need to send this to me to sign. It's okay if you sign it because it says broker or broker's affiliated salesperson. So it is okay if you sign the listing agreement. Just make sure that your brokerage name is identified and that your seller or sellers have signed in the correct places. And your name will go at the bottom. All right, we've covered the listing agreement, standard listing agreement. That's for residential, that's not for commercial. There, we have a separate form for that too. So if you need to amend your listing agreement, when we talked about amendments, if you have to do anything like that, you're going to use this form. It is an amendment to the F4B listing agreement. So what you'll do is if anything changes, expiration date, marketing date, maybe your list prices change. Are you doing a price drop? A lot of you just have a text message, but I like to keep everything in a paper trail, as you should. So if you're changing the price of the property, maybe you're doing a price improvement, known as a price drop, you're going to do that price correction there and have your seller sign it. Remember, everything's got to be in writing. Maybe commission's changing. Yeah, that would go there. Or they've decided maybe they didn't offer commission in the beginning, the compensation, but they've decided, hey, I want to offer some compensation. Keep in mind, if you go back and change it, do not send out an email blast. Don't do it. Don't send out an email blast telling everybody that your seller is now offering compensation because you will get fined and some MLSs will ban you permanently. So please don't do that. Don't ever put, so let me just explain this real quick, especially for our newer agents. Compensation and concessions are two completely different things. Concessions are where your seller is giving a buyer a certain amount towards maybe their closing costs, or they're given a carpet allowance, or they're given a decorating allowance, something of that nature. They're willing to pay so much towards closing costs. That is a concession. Compensation is where they're paying a commission to the buyer's broker, co-op, as we call it. So they're paying commission to the party that brings the buyer. So keep that in mind. All right, scrolling down.
One question. If we wanted to suspend a listing for a period of time
Mhm.
and then bring it back to market, say 4 weeks later,
You want to withdraw it from the MLS. You still have a
and
valid
just drop.
agreement. Yeah, you'll use this form and you're going to withdraw it. So let me go down. This form glitched here for a second. I don't know
Yeah,
what it did.
I'm looking. I didn't see the line. I was like,
Yeah. So if you've already got your listing in place, which you should, if the seller is wanting to come back and withdraw it for a temporary amount of time, maybe they're
yes,
doing something to the property, they're improving the property, they're going to add something onto the property. Maybe they're
we're going
just
to
not
furnish it.
wanting, yeah,
So,
they're gonna furnish it. Maybe it's the
yeah,
holidays and they don't want everybody coming to
bingo.
the property. They're not in a huge hurry. You're going to withdraw that property from the market. You're also going to send an email to the MLS. So
Okay.
depending on which MLS you're in, I can withdraw in some of them, but some of them we're going to have to send an email directly to the board, and the broker also
Hmm.
has to be copied because what's going to happen is if you try to withdraw or cancel, they're not going to do it for you as an agent. They're always going to email the broker. I've got a
Okay.
few agents who, just not thinking about it. They'll go and they'll email the board directly, and then I get forwarded the email that you sent for cancellation or withdrawal. So always copy me as the broker. Most of you send me a text ahead of time, giving me a heads up, and I'm like, thumbs up. Okay, I'll approve it as soon as it comes across. And I just send an email back to the board. It says approved. That's it. It's that simple. So make sure you've got your form documented and filled out first, so that it's been
Gotcha.
signed off on the seller. And then that would be the correct place, line 81. And then you're going to withdraw it. So effective
Okay.
withdrawal date here. Now, if you're returning the property from the withdrawal process, this same form is going to be used, the addendum. So this amendment is F42B. So this form is, the number is F42B, and it's an amendment to F4B. So same process, you're just going to come back and you're going to return the property, withdraw into marketing to active, and the property will go back active. Same process as sending the email. You're going to send the email back to the board, and they're going to make that listing active again.
Is there time limits on how long we have to leave it or how long we
There is
can
in
leave
certain
it?
associations. Certain associations will allow up to 60 to 90. Others
Okay.
won't. And I will caution you guys on another thing. For agent-owned properties, they don't allow, so like, and this is kind of off subject, but it's just something that came across my mind. So if you have an agent-owned property and you put in there that listing is active, right? but you don't want that property shown for 5 days from when you're marketing it. They're not going to let you do that, or at least they don't in HARP. They'll actually try to fine you for it. So if you have an agent-owned property, just keep in mind the moment you put that in the MLS, you have to open it up for showings. They're not going to let you put anything in the private remarks that says work being done to the property can't be shown until such and such date. They won't allow it. And it is finable. So you guys keep that in mind. But like I said, every MLS is different. We all have different sets of bylaws. Some have merged with United, but there's a few that we're still a part of that we got different laws. So, all
But
right. Maybe your amendment to your listing doesn't have the particular verbiage that you need in here. That is what this box is for. Any other changes that we need to spell out and make sure it's really clear, that's going to go from line 91 to 96. If there's not enough lines and you need to have additional verbiage, you can use a blank addendum. But what you would want to do is make sure that you've noted that you're adding a blank addendum to this amendment and then attach that blank addendum to this amendment. All right, same process, dated, signed. All right, we're moving down. Any questions? We've gone through 7 forms so far, so no questions. All right. This,
Hey, Natalie, I have a question.
hey, Amy.
Hey, what if a seller is willing to work dual agency with another agent in our office, but they are not willing to work dual agency with the listing agent being the buyer's agent or the buyer being a customer to the listing agent? Like they don't want the listing agent dealing with the buyer, but they're okay with another agent in our office
You
representing.
refer it out. Yeah, you
Mhm.
just refer it out to the other agent. And some agents it's still dual agency.
Yeah,
But however,
but
you
you
are
just,
working for that seller. And if that seller says, I don't want you bringing the buyer, I'm okay with another agent in your office, you refer it out to the other agent and let that agent handle it. You make sure that you've got everything documented to a T. All I's dotted, all T's crossed. Everything should be in writing. So that way, I mean, if you're working with somebody like that and they're very adamant about they don't want you to bring the buyer, but they're okay if you refer it out to another agent in the office, then you do exactly that. You refer it out to another agent and you let that agent work with that buyer. I do that
okay.
a lot. If I have that come up, I'll do that. So
Okay.
I've never had anybody told me I don't want you to bring the buyer, but I know it does happen. But a
Mhm.
lot of times, depending on the client, I'll refer it out to another agent, buyer's agent. So,
Yeah, I'd rather refer it out. So
yeah,
could you just note that in the special provisions?
you would, yeah. You
Okay.
you would spell out those terms here or even in your listing agreement. If they
Hmm.
told you I don't want you bringing the buyer, working with the buyer, just specifically want you to be the seller agent, you're going to put those changes here or either put it in your listing agreement here and other provisions, line 238 to 243.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, scrolling down. This is F51. All right. So basically, what this says, guys, I'm just put it real short for you. It clarifies what the seller or the listing brokerage may offer to a buyer's broker, if anything. It is a disclosure, not an MLS offer. It must be kept private between the parties. Um, Again, concessions are closing costs and are separate from paying a buyer's agent. So I'm going to go over this with you and just go line by line. F51, a lot of you don't use it. Some of you do. I use them on my listings. So here, if the seller is offering to compensate the buyer's brokerage, this is where it's already been agreed upon in the listing agreement. This is a form attached to your listing. You don't give your listing agreement to the other agent, by the way. But this form, you can send it to the cooperating agent. So the percentage goes here. It's what your seller is willing to pay. Maybe it's a flat fee, maybe it's other. It's whatever's been negotiated inside that listing agreement. If they're not offering anything, it's just going to say that here. They're not offering anything. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself because I was reading the wrong thing. Let's go back. Forget what I said on that last part. The seller is offering to compensate the buyer's brokerage. This is where it's partially decoupled here. We don't use this portion here. So forget this area. The listing brokerage is offering to compensate the buyer's broker. This is where if we were paying the buyer's broker directly, and this is where we would be fully coupled. We don't operate under that practice. So this only box you need to be worried about on here is 5 through 8. If your seller is paying compensation to the buyer's brokerage, that's going to be checked there. Don't worry about this here. All right. This is where it's separated, concessions and commissions, compensation is completely different. If your seller is willing to consider offering concessions, allowances, this is where we talked about if they were going to pay so much towards their closing costs, or if they're going to do a painting allowance or a flooring allowance or a decorating allowance, anything like that, that box would be checked. And then you're going to sign it there, sign and date. All right, moving down, that form is F51. Okay, property condition disclosure statement. You don't touch this. Your seller fills it out. You don't fill out any of this. So address, year the house was built. If they have not occupied it, I want to be real clear on something here. Just because the seller hasn't occupied it and they got knowledge doesn't mean they're excluded from filling this property disclosure out, okay? If you are a seller and let's say you're an agent, okay, you bought the house as a flip. You got knowledge of that property. You probably had a home inspection. Maybe you did some work to it. You're not exempt from filling out a property condition disclosure statement. Actually, you're held to a higher standard because you're a licensee. So just because you never occupied the property doesn't mean you're exempt from filling this form out. You must fill this form out. All right. If your seller hasn't occupied the property and they don't have any knowledge of the property and they filled this out, they're going to sign here. If they are excluded, but it has to be a statutory exclusion, it goes into all that detail here and it tells you if it was transferred by one of these here, then they're falling up under the exclusion. However, where you get into the fine lines of things, maybe you're sitting at the listing appointment and they are excluded, but they said, oh, by the way, I replaced the hot water heater, or a tree fell in the house and I had a contractor come out here and I did this work. Well, they should probably disclose that. They should probably be honest in their disclosure. They should. So what they're going to do is if they fall in one of these here, they're going to check one of these boxes and they'll sign it. But your seller's not going to sign this area. The seller will never sign this area here if there's no exclusion. So don't confuse this where they sign at the end. So this is only if they have a statutory exclusion. Okay. Moving down, it tells the party it's not a warranty of any kind by the seller. It's just they're telling them the knowledge about the property and what they know, right? So scrolling down, some of the questions are not going to be applicable to the property. Not all are. You know, like if it's, for example, if it's a house and it's talking about a mobile home, that's not going to be applicable. So they'll just fill it out accordingly. You can't tell them what to put on here. But what you tell them is that you got to fill it out truthfully and honestly, and that you can't touch it. So I usually have them fill it out while I'm there, and then I'll take and scan a copy, and let them keep their copy. So I have a scanner inside my phone, and I scan everything, and then I upload it to SkySlope. If I'm not sending everything to them, eSign. All of that information as far as utilities go here. This is important here when you're watching about like water quality reports, or if they have any kind of, data on that, you want to make sure that they're disclosing that. Again, you can't tell them how to fill it out, but they should be truthful and honest. And then scrolling down here, this is where your seller signs. So once they have everything fully completed, and I don't want to skip over this real quick. So if seller knows of a problem with one or more of the items listed above, it could be anything in that property disclosure, explain the problem here, attach additional pages if necessary. If no explanation appears in the box or an attached page, the seller thereby indicates being unaware of any problems. So what they want you to do is just disclose if the seller knows, not you, the seller. All right, your seller's going to sign here once they fully completed this property condition disclosure statement. They're going to date it. The buyer, when should this be presented? Well, it should be presented when they're going to look at the property. The buyer's agent has requested it if you don't already have it uploaded into the MLS. So if it's not attached with the offer, you got to watch those contracts too. Sometimes it can say it's not attached and you have like 3 days to get it back to them. So just be mindful that you're getting all the documents and disclosures over to the other party. All right, once the buyer signed acknowledging if anything changes on it, anything materially to that property that has not been disclosed, again, could be a tree fell on the house, maybe had a flood, whatever, they've got to update the property condition disclosure statement. They've got 3 days by law to do that. So at closing, they're going to sign this form. Seller's going to sign it saying that everything's true and factual and nothing's changed with it. However, if something does change with it, we'll talk about that form in a second. I don't want to skip over this. This is your supplemental material pages. This is an additional explanation page. It's referenced in the PCDS to be used for additional explanations if necessary. This is anything that the seller would need to explain to a buyer, things that they might have done to the property, things that they couldn't disclose on the property condition disclosure statement because there wasn't a placeholder. That information would go here. If they need an additional page, they're going to use another one. So and it tells us that. It says if you need it, use more pages. So they would just use 2 of these if 1 is not enough. Always get them to sign it here at the bottom and date it. Initial, date it. All right. Amendment. Amendment should not be confused with the supplemental area. So the additional explanation page is whenever that's upon listing. And then going down. Your amendment is when something materially is affecting the property that you've got to amend it. That comes into play here. Date it. Seller's going to fill it out here. Seller certification. And then you as the agent have got to get it back over ASAP to the buyer's agent. And then the buyer's got to acknowledge it. If the buyer doesn't acknowledge it and they don't like it, they have a way out if something materially changes to the property. All right. This is also your additional explanation page here. I don't know why this is doubled. It's the same exact thing. So, all right. We're not going over this today. Agreement shown. We're running about 8 minutes over. We're going to wrap this up in a few minutes. Okay. Here, for those of you who are newer on the call, if you have a property that this is for sale by owner or property that is not listed in the MLS, it's agreement to show unlisted property. It may not even be a for sale by owner. It may be somebody that you knew of or you know of, and it was word of mouth, and they're willing to sell their property, but it's not listed. This form would come into play. And for the newer agents, if you're not sure how to fill it out, get with me and I'll go over it with you. Unimproved property disclosure statement. This is exactly what it says it is. Unimproved property is where there's not an improvement on the property. A lot of times it's used with land. So this would go with the land listing. And then your personal property agreement bill of sale. This is anything that is not real property. Maybe furniture. Maybe there's something in the house, some wall art. Maybe it's a lawnmower. Maybe it's a John Deere tractor. Who knows? Could be anything. Could be something that, the seller said, hey, I'm willing to sell it, but either I want this amount for it or I don't want anything for it. Even if they don't want anything for it and it's still being conveyed with the property, it should still be spelled out of what is being conveyed. And if there's no price, you just are going to put 0 there. Don't know why it's not typing, but you just put 0, just like that. Make sure all this is filled out. If there is a price stated, you put the price there. Buyer and seller need to sign acknowledging. Addendums, they can be used for additional things, but most of the time we've got amendments for everything. So, yeah. All right, guys. I know that was a lot, but I hope it was helpful, and I hope you all got something out of it today. Any questions? No? All right. Well, I hope you all are enjoying the holidays and you have a wonderful December. We will be having our next meeting. It's on the third week. So it's the first and third week. I don't even know what the date is, but I do hope to see you all at the Christmas party on December the 18th. I know a lot of you are asking about the new office location that has not been disclosed yet, because corporate is still in the works of consolidating a few things. So I'm going to have to get with those of you who we have some office changes that has come about, but it will be announced. We do have a new Gulfport location as well. Our wonderful coastal broker, Leslie Bourgeois, and most of all of you should be in contact with Leslie, and know where that new office location is. If not, we will drop it in the chat box down there, and your license will be transferred to that new location. So just a heads up. All right, guys. Hope y'all have a wonderful week ahead. If y'all need anything, let us know.